Thank you for joining us for Working Through the Word, a ministry of the Richmond Church of Christ. Let's join our pulpit minister, Mike Johnson, as he brings today's lesson.
I rather imagine that when the offer was made to turn in questions to be answered, probably everybody thought, oh, that one's definitely going to be discussed. Because this passage has been discussed over and over, literally, for centuries. The early church talked about it. The church fathers talked about it. And it's been talked about all the time through. And it is difficult to figure out in this passage who are the sons of men, who are the sons of God, who are the daughters of men, and who are the Nephilim. Well, there are some questions that are just enjoyable to study, but that we don't have to know the exact answer. Well, I'm here to tell you this is one of them. I don't know that anybody knows. I could line up people that I respect in a number of different positions that they take on this topic. What I will say is this: when we come to topics and have questions about which it is difficult to find an answer, sometimes this is where we have to land. I don't know that we can know, but what I know is that whatever I decide cannot contradict things in Scripture that I know to be true, leaving open the possibility of a number of different answers to whatever that question might be. And I would suggest that this is one of those questions. But I will give you my thoughts as this question came across, and we'll try to think about this idea of sons of God first. I found these four major ways to consider it, and the fourth one being a composite of a couple of different ones. The most popular answer is these are angels. And they take the text, if you're looking there in Genesis chapter 6, and they say that these angels came down from heaven and were married, or at least came together sexually with women, human women, and from them were born a race of big, huge giants. That's the most popular view. And even those who believe that these are fallen angels, these sons of God, not all of them will go and follow every detail that everybody else does, or some do, flowing from that. But that's one of the views. Here's another view. Sons of God are the descendants of Seth. Seth, of course, was the son born to Adam and Eve after Cain killed Abel. And the daughters of men are the descendants of Cain. And they get that by going back to chapter 4. The end of chapter 4 details the lineage of Cain. Chapter 5 details the lineage of Seth. Then you come to chapter 6 and we have this statement. And therefore they say, in context, chapter 6 is describing those faithful people from Seth's lineage getting together with the unfaithful from Cain's lineage. A third view. This view says that sons of God is a reference to rulers, kings, who, using their power, abused women and took them to them because they could. And a fourth idea is that the sons of God are faithful men who chose women and did not make good choices to be married. Now, those are four things that I want us to consider as we think about who are the sons of God. But now, who are the Nephilim? This word is only used 3 times in the Old Testament. It's used here, and then it's used again in Numbers 13 and verse 33 twice in the same passage. It's very difficult, therefore, to figure out when you have such a small number of verses to try and figure out how that word is used and what it means. And the best that some have done, it seems in the study that I did, was that this word comes from a root word that might mean a bully or a tyrant. It also could mean a fallen one. Now, I've set these up to show you what the discussion is. Now let's go into a discussion about what makes sense with these ideas. I want to start with the Nephilim. Now, if you look in Genesis chapter 6, you will see that these sons of God, verse 2, took the daughters of men. Then you go down to verse 4, and there were giants on the earth. Now, this word giant is the word Nephilim. Both times that we see this word, it is transliterated. You look at all the versions that we have, the translations, the vast majority of them simply say Nephilim. When you say the word Nephilim, you are actually pronouncing a Hebrew word. That's what it means to transliterate. You simply take the word in the original language and pronounce it in the target language, and it becomes that word. The problem is, when you do that, you don't really have any idea what it means. Well, that's because it was tough to figure it out. So how did the word giant get in there? If you're reading from the New King James, the King James, probably the ESV, the word giant is there. I'm not sure it occurs every time in the other versions because the word giant came to us through the Septuagint. Now, the Septuagint is a translation of Scripture. The Septuagint is a Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. When they came to this word in the Septuagint, Nephilim, they put in the Greek word gigantes, giant. Trying to figure out what it means, therefore, is a little bit difficult. Now, there were giants in the Bible. You know about them, and I know about them. There was a guy that the children of Israel encountered named Og. Og, king of Bashan. Now, Og had a bed that was 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. And so people would therefore say, if you have that big a bed, you were probably a rather big man. Well, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe he just liked a big bed. But the implication is he was a giant. However, we all know the story of Goliath. Now, Goliath was, as we would call it, a giant. He was 9 feet tall. And of course, David slew this giant. Now, 9 feet, that's pert near big. Now, if you have watched this past year, if you saw any college basketball, the tallest recorded teenager in the world played basketball for the Florida Gators. And he was, I believe, 7 feet 10, was it? 7 feet 9. That's pretty tall. But 7'9" would still be looking up to 9 feet. I would say, if I were to encounter this guy, he's a giant. So the idea of giant is a rather subjective term. If you live around a bunch of people who are 4 feet tall and you're 6 feet tall, you're a giant in that crowd. But the idea of giants is real. Now, we find also in 2 Samuel that there was another guy. He was a giant. He had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. 2 Samuel 22, about verse 20. I want you to notice, just as an aside, go down to verse 22 in that chapter. Here's what's interesting. The text said, these 4 giants David and his servants killed. How many stones did David take with him to kill Goliath? You ever wondered why he took 5? Did he think God might miss? He took 5 because he knew Goliath had 4 brothers. I'm going to kill Goliath. They're going to come next, and we'll take them out too. That's just an aside. These Nephilim, it makes sense to me that they would be giants. It makes sense to me that these were people of great stature. In the Numbers 13 passage, when the children of Israel came to the promised land, and they said, the 10 spies, we can't go in. One of the reasons we can't go in, they said, is because there are giants in the land. We can't do it. They're too big. I think it makes sense that these Nephilim are giants. I don't have a problem with translating this word giants, men of great stature. Okay, now let's get to the text and the words that we really want to hear about. Let's talk about the sons of God. Well, let's walk down through these ideas together. These are fallen angels. Well, I will say to you that I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying this is not what I believe. I've read a bunch about people saying yes and people saying no, and I just have landed on the side of no. Here's the reason. These angels are spirits. Well, at least angels are. Now, I'm not denying that angels haven't at times taken human form. Not denying that at all. I don't recall a time when an angel took a human form and did something evil. I don't find that. Now, if you want to say demon possession is an angel taking over somebody, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But these angels are spirits. Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 14, that's what the Hebrew writer says. Are they not ministering spirits? Now, in Luke 24, after Jesus was resurrected, he came to his disciples, and particularly one didn't believe until he was going to touch the injuries that Jesus had, Thomas. Jesus invited his disciples when he came to them, verse 39. He said, come and see me. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, or flesh and blood, as you see me. And that's what Jesus said. A spirit does not possess flesh and blood. Have they appeared as though they do? Yes, but they don't possess it. Angels are therefore spirit beings that don't have physical characteristics as a part of their nature. Jesus said, recorded 3 times in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that angels do not marry, nor are they given in marriage. And I know that for absolute certain. Now, this text, if you look at this text, yes, it does say that they saw these daughters and they took wives for them. That's true. See, sons of God. But if they did, then how does that fit with the text that says they don't marry? Got to think about that. So I don't think that these angels, these sons of God, are angels that married. I believe that this position doesn't seem to have the weight simply because of the evidence that they're not physical beings. Now, again, I say, might be. But I don't think so. I don't believe that's what's going on here. And one of the reasons I don't believe that, let's read the text together one more time. Go down to verse 4. There were giants on the earth. When? In those days. What does it say then? And afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of men and bore children to them. It doesn't make sense to me that I'm supposed to connect fallen angels as sons of God who came here and produced a race of giants when the text says the giants were already here. Isn't that what it says? They were there, and they were there afterward when the sons of God bore these children. And therefore, at the end of verse number 4, these mighty men of old, men of renown, are not the giants that the verse talks about. So I don't think that this is about fallen angels propagating with human women. Number 2, It is interesting in context that you see the descendants of Cain, then you see the descendants of Seth, and then you have our text. Well, I can see the point. This word, sons of God, is used more than once. Twice in the book of Deuteronomy, God calls the children of Israel sons of God. And there are other times when the sons of God has reference, but in that way, it's not intended to be of a physical nature or of a genetic concept, but rather this is a group identified in a certain way. And so it seems not to be with this situation, because sons of God used many times, but never, not one time, ever used about Seth. So it would be a stretch to me to say that these are people who came from the lineage of Seth, these sons of God, which means that the daughters of men come from the line of Cain, who had become evil or unfaithful. So, the third thing is that these are fallen, or these are terms describing kings and tyrants who made these women subservient to them, taking them as wives. The one who was proposing this said, this is an evidence of the sons of God committing polygamy and prostitution, or polygamy and sexual sin. Well, if you go back to chapter 4, you're going to find Lamech, who bemoaned the fact that he took himself 2 wives, and then he killed a man, and he said, if Cain was punished 7-fold, I'm going to be punished 77 times more. These people have an illusion that things have gotten so bad that polygamy was now a part of this situation, and promiscuity was going on. But the text never says that. It just doesn't talk about that at all. Yes, sons of God is a term that many kings used of themselves, but God didn't. Especially in mythological times, and even in the Roman emperor times, did they not view themselves as special because they are anointed by God? Yes, they did. But the Bible doesn't say that. That would be reading backwards, it seems to me, in the text, rather than letting the text talk to us. Therefore, it is my view that these sons of God and daughters of men and a connection with the Nephilim giants, for me, is best interpreted this way. What happens after this? Now, it seems natural to me to come back and discuss what happens next, because God's going to say that he was sorry that he made man. We probably ought to come back and talk about that, shouldn't we? Because God repented. God messed up. God changed. Are any of those true? I'll just leave that with you. But prior to that, I think what's happening here is this. Sons of God, these are good men. These are solid leaders. But there's a phrase up here in verse 2 that answers this for me. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, notice, of all whom they chose. There's not a man in this room who says, I did not marry a beautiful woman. I didn't say about whether men ever think that. I'm saying you never said it. That's fact. But I would also say that every one of us believe that we did. So there's no problem with that. Sons of God saw these beautiful women. I don't have a problem with that because God made them. And God made them the way He made them. It's beautiful. Tuesday, last week, I was asked to speak over in Nicholasville, and they gave me my topic of Proverbs 31. I'd never done just a sermon or a discussion on that text. I want to bring that message here, but I will give you a hint. I termed Proverbs 31 women as forces of nature. And I'll show you where that text says it when I get there one day. So I don't have any problem with what he says. I have a problem with the next phrase. It seems to me that there's a contrast. It seems to me that these are godly men who lost their way. Not because of the beautiful women, but because all they saw was beauty on the outside. Their choices. It doesn't say anything in here about these sons of God honored God with the women they chose. It says that they chose for materialistic thought, not for spiritual thought. Therefore, it is my opinion that the sons of God in this text are faithful men who lost their way. And in losing their way of not seeking out women that God would choose, actually then defiled the women they chose, so that very soon we get to the flood. I think it is interesting that when God said, I've had enough, I can't take it anymore, it happened right after this. So that's my view. I don't think this text is really, if I want to say you're going to nail it down and choose one answer and that's absolutely true and everyone else is wrong, then yeah, it's a tough text. But it's not tough for me to get to this point concerning this. So what then do we need to talk about? We need to close with this idea. When we get to the flood, we're going to get there because of a mindset. And the mindset was not set on God. The mindset that brought about the flood was a mind set on self. And when we live based on what the self wants, we're going to get in trouble if it is not what God wants. So we can learn from this text God destroyed an entire world, save 8 people, because of a materialistic mindset that did not put God first. How far are we from that today? Interesting, isn't it? Let us learn the lesson that we have to put God and what He wants at the front and center. Otherwise, we're heading down a road of destruction. That's the lesson we learn. Whether we can answer with specificity and finality the answer to who are the sons of God. But that's the best I do. If you have other thoughts, we'll talk about it later, I'll be glad to hear it. If you've had a materialistic mindset that kept you away from serving the Lord, kept you out of being obedient through baptism, tonight would be a good time to change that. Every one of us, in one way or another, every day is fighting a materialistic mindset. I've reminded myself today while studying this passage, I need to work on that. Maybe you do too. Maybe you can make that decision tonight while we stand and sing together.
We hope that you enjoyed today's broadcast, brought to you by the Richmond Church of Christ. We are located at 1500 Lancaster Road in Richmond, Kentucky. We meet at 9 a.m. each Sunday morning for Bible class, followed by our morning worship service held at 10 a.m. Our Sunday evening service is held at 6 p.m. Our midweek Bible study is held on Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you are in the area, we would love to have you as our honored guest. Thanks for listening.